It says, there it is. Good morning. How are y'all? We are here, barely. This is Trish with Hip Homeschool Moms, and there's Heidi. Say
Good
hi.
morning, everybody. Here we are, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. I'm working on getting up a little earlier these days to try and get some more done before the kids get moving. And I am not a morning person, so yeah, I say getting up early for those of you, let me clarify. Getting up early is 7 a.m. for me. That's early, folks. So I normally roll out of bed about 8:30, so 8:30. So 7 is early for me. I'm trying to get that hour and a half of time before I let the younger children out of their rooms, before they have this invisible force field where they're supposed to be in their rooms till 8:30. Yeah.
Heidi needs to change the name of her site.
I know it needs to become starts at 8:30 instead of starts at 8. I know everybody jokes about that. I have a friend who gets up very early, like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and I always joke that she bakes loaves of bread, multiple loaves before I get up in the morning, and then she always jokes about how, I don't, if I say I don't get up till 9, oh, it's got to change it to starts at 9 now, got to change it to. So yeah, starts at 8 is because I truly, my younger, especially my middle son,
Oh.
likes to get up really early, and I need some time in the morning. My teenager's up doing work, but my son, it's like I was like, okay, you can't leave your room until 8. You can get up, you can have work in your room, you can read in your room, you can play in your room, but you may not leave your room until 8. And right now it's 8:30 because we're kind of transitioning into that summer, and I just needed a little space. So
Hmm.
yeah, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed since I got up early, 7 a.m., folks.
I'm not brought up bushy-tailed. I woke up. I did get up early. I don't know why. Something's going on with my hormones or something. I'm 48, getting ready to turn. I guess I'm going into menopause, maybe premenopause. I don't know. Who knows? But I'm getting up early, and I don't really understand why. So I was up at like 7:15. So maybe I need to change mine. Instead of living lower
Yeah.
farm, it'll be starts at 7:30. Have to beat Heidi.
Yes,
I'm
you
just
got to
picking
one
on
up
you.
me and get up a little earlier.
I'm
As I
just.
said, I'm like, well, it's
Oh.
funny because my one lady that I know here that homeschools too, and when we first met, she was so impressed because she thought it was like, we were sitting at our desks like all ready to go working at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I'm like, oh heck no, nobody's allowed out of their rooms until 8 in the morning. Like I need some time. So I'm like, yeah, no. I'm like, we're not. I mean, we get up and get going by 9 for sure. We're actually going. Um, my teenager much earlier, but yeah, no, we are not. I'm not. Anyways, my son is very bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, but not me in the morning.
That's too funny. I'm not either. I'm not a morning person, although I'm getting there. So we're here, guys. We're not necessarily bright or bushy-eyed, bushy-tailed, whatever. Where did that saying come from? I wonder. That's an idiom. That's a very
Bright-eyed.
odd idiom for America. Okay, that's your homework, guys. Don't you love homeschool moms? We're always passing out homework. So that's
Bright-eyed.
homework.
It's like
Find
it's
out.
like raining cats and dogs,
Yeah. Where did that idiom
bright-eyed and
come
bushy-tailed.
from? Yep. See, that's a very strange idiom, and I've never thought about that until right now, until I said it wrong. So, anyway, good morning, guys. We actually have viewers, so I guess we probably ought to do what we're supposed to do today, huh? You think? Maybe?
Yeah, they
Probably.
might want to, they might want us to answer their questions.
Once or twice.
Just a thought.
Okay.
Yeah, just a thought.
Okay, we'll get to it. Okay, so we actually we don't have Lisa here today. Lisa is off at Lisa Pennington from the Pennington Point is off she's speaking at a 1 year adventure novel meetup, something. Isn't that cool? I'm dying to hear
Yes,
about that.
that's very cool. I know.
Oh, I
I've
want to
been
hear about
eyeing that program, I'm like eyeing it, but I don't think my teenager would be game for something like that. So I have to wait for one of the other ones to give it a try.
we're doing it next year. We're
Mm.
all three of my boys are doing it next year. We're dying to try it because they already have started novels that they can't seem to manage to keep on track. So I'm really intrigued. So I can't wait to hear what Lisa has to share with us. So anyway, okay, so we're gonna get on it. Let's see. We'll start with Candida's question. She says, "Good morning, Candida. By the way, it's always nice to have you here. We hear a dog. Hey."
Yeah, you hear my dog. I muted her so I could tell her to be quiet.
It says, when a child expresses an interest in something, how do you get age-appropriate information to them in a timely manner that they don't lose interest? That's a really good question because it's interesting because that's really what you want to be doing. You want to be following what their particular interests are. And Heidi is great at pulling together unit studies, and that really is a unit study question. So I'm going to let her answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the crux of the question now? What exactly do you want me to answer when it
Well,
comes
she wants
to,
to know when a child expresses interest, see, we're really bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. We told you we were. Okay, so when a
I'm a little
child
distracted by the dog.
okay. So when a child is interested in a subject, when they express interest, how do you get information to them that's age appropriate quickly? So that's how do you pull together your unit study quickly,
Oh,
is
that's
essentially
exactly
what
how
she's
do I
asking.
that's almost essentially what the basis of what I do for my youngest one because I kind of, she's 8. She's going to be going into 3rd grade now, but she likes to do kind of that cut and pasty type stuff, and she gets, we run into something, and like for instance, Girl Scouts, we adopted a panda, and suddenly it was all about pandas. So. What I typically do is I will start with a quick Google search of information. I'm looking for maybe notebooking pages, maybe like fact file type sheets.
So give us an
You
example.
know,
I know you did a B one recently, so tell us what your search strings might be for that B one.
um, with the B one, how did I even start the B one? I'm trying to think what spurred it. Oftentimes a book will spur it too, but like I'll go on and I'll say, B unit study or B facts or B's for kids or something along those lines, and then I kind of start pulling from there. You'll click on something that might have links to something else. Or I might tweak the study, the search, and maybe switch to honeybee, or
Hive,
and start, yeah,
beehives.
and the beehives, and start pulling stuff up. I usually find, if you look at my unit studies, you'll see I usually have some sort of a YouTube video, whether that be like for the bee one, I have not only do I have an actual live, like somebody recording their beehive and some stages, but I also pulled the Magic School Bus. Has a whole beehive episode. So there's always resources to go along with those. If you're doing, some of the science stuff, you can often find a Magic School Bus, and there's always resources for those. So I usually like to have a YouTube video. So I will do, like if you look at my Canada unit study, I actually made a whole playlist because I was busier at the time, and I made a playlist of appropriate videos. I went on YouTube and I searched Canada for kids, and I previewed some videos and put some stuff together so that then my daughter, I just opened up the playlist, and she was able to go ahead and look at those videos, whatever the myriad happened to be. So I like to have YouTube videos. That's a real quick, easy search for the most part too. You do a little scouring. I use the library big time, whatever the subject is. I'll start with the library and get some books from the library. And my Google search, like I said, in the Google search, I'm looking for things, more hands-on things, free lap booking, or inexpensive lap booking supplies or unit study supplies. You can get stuff at like kirklick.com. Amanda Bennett has unit studies. Homeschool Share has unit studies and lap books and templates and stuff. So those are some real quick go-to places. Now we're talking obviously elementary age for the most part for this is the
Hmm.
ones I create. Not This is not a high school type of thing
No.
that I do. This is more elementary, maybe even early middle school. If you want to up some of the resources that you're using a little bit, you can find a little bit higher level resources for some of it. But so we're talking mostly elementary. So that's what I do. My child at any given time will suddenly decide to get into something and or be interested in something. And so I'm quickly, okay, what books can I get from the library? What quick Google search will bring me for a few activities, a craft. There's like, what is it, DLTK, I think it's called. It has tons of crafts, real simple, easy crafts for almost anything you can possibly think of. So that's a site that I often end up at too for crafts and activities. So
Mm.
does you think that answers? That's how
Uh-huh.
I do it. Anyways, I'm
I
not
think it's
sure,
good stuff.
and
It's
it's
really
pretty
good
quick.
stuff.
It's not something that, you can find resources at the tip of your fingers on the internet pretty quickly. Obviously, the library, you have to physically go there, but there's a lot of stuff right on the internet. And even there's often a lot of books that we've done that either people have like videoed themselves doing on YouTube, or somebody's done like an animated version of them, or, there's a lot of them like that. And so we often will, you could even watch the book. That happened to me. I was doing a map unit, and I somehow managed to not have the primary book, and I found it being read on YouTube. And so that was like literally the day I was doing it, I'm like, where's the book? And I found it on YouTube. And so my daughter and I sat and watched somebody read it, because it wasn't at our local library, and it wasn't at our local Barnes and Noble, so I couldn't just run out and grab it. And I found it to somebody reading it on YouTube. So
That's
you can get a
fantastic.
lot.
See?
Yeah, you can get a lot quickly, more than you think. So.
That's great. That's great. I've never actually searched for a book, so that's interesting. And Heidi didn't mention it, but she does a lot of lap booking. And if your children are into lap booking, those resources are out there as well. And um, once you have done it probably 4, 5, 6 times, at least for me, there are certain places that become your go-to place, like Kirklick. I mean, if I'm going to do a unit study, which I don't do a whole lot of unit studies, but I do. Maybe I do them and I don't realize I do them. I don't call them unit studies, but we do study topics like the westward expansion. So I might go out there to Kirklick and see what they have for westward expansion and things like that. So
The nice thing about ClickClick too is it's not just one type of resource that they have. It's obviously downloadable content, but they have lap booking, they have more like research based, they have note booking, they have, so you can often find a variance in the type of resource on whatever subject you're looking for too. It's not just lap books or just
and
note
and some are
booking.
free. Not
Yes.
all of them are paid. You can actually find quite a few free on Kirklick. So,
And a
and
lot
we're
of them are very inexpensive too.
yeah,
A
oh
lot of them
yeah,
are very,
and they're
not
moms.
just
I
cheap and
mean,
inexpensive.
a lot of moms have asked about how to have an income, and there's an option right there. If you're creating unit studies, you can actually create them and then turn around and sell them over there on Kirklick, as long as you're not, plagiarizing or using somebody else's copyrighted material. And so I know a lot of moms do that already. There you go. You're not going to get rich off of doing it, but you might, supplement your income for sure. So that's another idea. So Candida, I hope we answered that question fully. So we're going to move on. The next one is something that I think all of us. I didn't do sight words, but Tahor asked for suggestions on teaching sight words, and I'm going to say every single thing that we have done, we didn't teach sight words, although I guess we did in some aspect because we did a lot of games. If you can make a game out of it, I highly recommend trying to keep fun in your homeschool, because I think that when children think it's fun, they don't have a problem at all doing it, and they want to do it. They actually will go pull the game out and do it themselves. And we had a ton of games that we did that were sight words, but I didn't really look at it that way. They were bingo, and things like that, where you're reading the word and they have to find it on their bingo page. So what did you do?
With
Because
my
you did
oldest,
teach sight words.
I did. With my older two, I didn't. With my third one, I did. Used a lot of those the Dolce sight word lists.
Hmm.
And I actually I was looking on my shelf over here. I actually took them downstairs now, but I have a whole box of sight word cards that I made. So
Like on
and
index cards?
like, yeah, they like you can find a myriad of just free printable cards for the sight words. And so I had just printed some, like I got some free downloadable ones, and I laminated them. And you can double them up and use them as a matching game,
Hmm.
which the kids like. I'll use them as flashcards. I'll, whatever. Well, but what I started with. So I'd we'd take a few of them and, try and learn them. And then we'd use like the Bob books. The Bob books do a lot of, they cover a lot of the sight words and very simply. So we used Bob books. We also used a lot of Leap, the Yeah, the leapfrog games, like you were talking about games, they have a lot of word games, um, like GNU, and let's see what
Hmm.
I have GNU over there. What's GNU? Um, so we did use a lot of word games, but when I was really working with it with Ava, I used like a flashcard sort of method, and started that way, and then you can play games off of the cards, like a
Hmm.
matching game, and or a bingo. You can obviously use them as bingo too, and so that's how I started, was kind of with a flashcardy gamey. I also had my oldest went to school for a couple of years, and her teacher used these small books. Obviously, they were, she had printed them, and they were sight word books, and so it was
Mm.
literally books that used, one sight word, and then maybe that sight word plus another sight word, and you'd have pictures that would go along with it. So it wasn't always just the word. It'd be like the dog, the cat,
That
so
sounds like Bob books.
yep, and they were a lot like Bob books. So I had those too that my daughter had from school, because they each kid, as they got, they did the book, they all got another one. The teacher had printed these things out, and
Hmm.
so that's how I did sight words. I'm a big flashcard girl. I know lots of people are not. I'm a big flashcard girl. So we use flashcards for math. We use them for sight words. I literally, my husband still to this day talks about how, I liked my flashcards more than him when we were dating, because I was in college and I had to learn all the action, origin, insertion, excuse me, and innervation of all the muscles in the body. So I carried my flashcards everywhere.
Mm.
I
I'm
have
not
a
a
whole,
flashcard.
yeah, see, and that's something, I'm a flashcard girl. That works for me. And so,
Hmm. Poor thing.
sorry. Yeah, I got a tickle
Mm.
in my throat. So I'm a flashcard girl, and like I said, I am very aware that a lot of people are not. My little one, not so much a flashcard girl, which is where, like, like you were talking about with games, we had a
Hmm.
ton of early learning games, like I said, from companies like Leapfrog. I'm trying to think what that other, who is that? Think Fun. Yes, Think Fun has
Mm.
tons.
I have.
Um,
Yeah.
so we have a lot of that type of stuff that we used with my youngest one, because she loved doing that kind of stuff. So that's really how we did it.
We did too. We love games. We like to make anything a game if we can. And I'm a game person, except for Monopoly. I don't like to play Monopoly anymore. But every other game I'll play. And so that's probably my learning style is, Heidi learns with flashcards and I learn with doing. And so we did tons of games. But Scrabble is one. Scrabble's bigger, obviously. But when they're little, bingo was probably just as fun as anything to pull out, and you could actually make your own bingo cards. There's actually sites out there called Make Your Own Bingo Cards or something like that that you can find, and you can literally create your own. So that's an idea too.
Yeah, the
Um,
learning games are endless. I mean, even they have Scrabble Junior, where there's
mhm.
prefab words basically that they're working to create. We played a lot of Scrabble Junior when the kids were younger, and now my son who is 11 wants to play regular Scrabble, and sometimes it's a little hard because you can't just form 3 and 4 letter words. You really need to get some longer words when you're trying to play a decent game of Scrabble. But so we do play Scrabble. We're into dice games right now though, and I don't have them
Yes.
up here, but there's this thing called education cubes, and they're these like
Mhm.
foam blocks. I don't know if you've seen them. I
Yeah.
I used them when the kids were younger, and they have a site, and you buy these like these. I think they're not really foam. They're like almost like a stuffing, like a pillow, but they're blocks, and they have the plastic around the sides, and you can just keep replacing them with different things. And on their website, they link to lots of people. I know I have a link there from stuff a game that I had created using them, because people use them in so many different ways. And so it's another way, like you said, to make your own bingo cards. These are like little, almost like dice, and rolling and playing. And there's tons of variations of things you can do with
Mhm.
that.
Mhm. We love dice too. We use dice. We used them a little bit differently. We used them for multiplication facts. We roll the dice, and you can buy them in the ones that have 12 sides. But okay, next, there's actually a couple of questions. We have one that did not make it to the list that Megan just popped in. Hey, Megan. Megan is in Nashville, and she asks, how do you construct a lesson a lesson plan and how much time do you spend on each subject? And we sort of just covered that when we were talking about unit studies, because really a unit study is sort of a lesson, but it's not the plan. So I guess I don't do lesson plans that way. Do you do lesson plans that way?
I've done lesson plans in a couple of different ways. I've gotten now more, I use a fair amount of curriculum, like, I use a specific math curriculum, so I kind of,
Yeah.
so it's like, okay, my kids are using teaching textbooks, so there's what, 120 lessons, say, whatever, there's 120 lessons in it. I would, divide that out by the number of weeks I want to, spend on school, and then, say it's like, okay, so that means they have to do it 4 days a week. So I make sure that, we have 4 days a week. Or so that is sort of, I also used to, when the kids were a little younger and I was doing more worksheet based, I literally had a file folder, and I have like a series of posts on my blog about this, where I took hanging file folders and labeled them with the weeks 1 through 36, and literally planned each week and had the papers for each week in each file, and just pulled
Wow.
out the files. Yeah, I planned the entire 36 weeks that way, had everything printed and in the files, and which worked really well for me for a couple of years. But I use Homeschool Tracker on the computer, and and I kind of have a system down now where, like I said, like with math, it's like, okay, we pretty much we have to do math at least 4 days a week. We have to do grammar, so many days a week, and so that's how I break it down, and then I just make sure that if grammar has, well, like my daughter's spelling has just, it's set out, it's 36
Mhm.
weeks. So it's like, okay, well, each week, out of 36, and I try to school somewhere between 30 and 36 weeks, some more formal than others. Like we may do 30 formal weeks, and then, there's, an accumulation of 6 weeks from, field trips or, side tangents or whatever it is that we've managed. So that's sort of in a nutshell how I lesson plan.
And she said, how much time do you spend on each subject? So I'm assuming she's saying daily. And Megan, that's, I know you keep hearing this and we've said this 1,000 times, and you're going to feel like we're a broken record. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice this morning. But it really varies. It depends on the topic. It depends on the student. It depends on their attention span. And it depends, I mean, for instance, spelling. Heidi was just talking about spelling. Our spelling curriculum is all about spelling, and it literally takes about 15 minutes. Literally. So 15 minutes for spelling. We don't do it every single day. We do spelling 2 or 3 times a week. Math, we do 3 days a week, and math is usually an hour, at least an hour, depending on how long it takes them. So each one is a little different, and you're going to figure that out as you start using your curriculum, because right now you haven't started yet, so you don't know that spelling's only going to take you 15 minutes. You don't know that math is really to cover the subject and cover it well, and to give them some time to practice and to work through the problems is going to take an hour. You don't know that yet, but I promise you, once you start, each child may be a little bit different, but in general, you're going to start seeing a trend. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I use Homeschool Tracker, and I literally print out, I have my daughters here, see if we can. I literally print out an assignment sheet for each week for the kids that they check off, and you can see there's times here. But for me, it has become an approximation. Like I know
Mm-hmm.
that, they're doing a keyboarding program. I want them to spend 15 minutes on it, so I allot 15 minutes. Um, Spelling for my daughter, she's using Soaring with spelling, and on Mondays and Friday, because it's set up for each week, and you do one thing each week, like it's very set. And but Mondays and Fridays is literally just like a practice test and a final test, and so that doesn't even take 15 minutes, so I allot 15 minutes for that. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday are actual activities and things that she's doing working with the words, so I allot 30 minutes for that. Well, some days it might take her 15, some days it might take her 40. But as I've gone on with each of my children, I know how long it takes. My teenager I used to allot an hour for math. but then it was consistently at like, more than that, consistently an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours. So then I upped my generic allotted time to an hour and a half for math because she was definitely, she was over that hour mark consistently. And so that's what we did. You learn your kids, you learn what your routine is and how long it takes for things and what's important to you. I'm a big proponent of math. We make sure we're really, the reading, writing, arithmetic kind of thing. I'm a big proponent of all that. And then I kind of alternate days usually with like history and science. If we do history, we usually won't do science that day. And my history and science is a more hands-on project based, so those things tend to take longer. It might take us, 2 hours to do, whatever it is we're
Hmm.
doing in history and science because we happen to be doing, something with it, something
Yep.
more with it than just kind of workbooking. So yeah, I think that number one, it depends on what you think is what you as as the teacher, as the adult, are putting an importance on, and what you're spending more time on. And number two, how much time you find that your kids need with each subject. You may have a kid that's struggling in math that needs a lot more time and
That's right.
attention than another child. So you might have one kid spending 2 hours on math, and you might have another kid done in 45 minutes with what they're doing. And so I would say it definitely varies, and I think it's really important to keep in mind what your kids can handle, and how much they can take too, because sometimes I know type A me wants to check off my boxes, and it
Hmm.
doesn't always work that way. Sometimes you got to take a step back and say, okay.
And Megan, I know that Megan hasn't started yet, and Megan is a friend of Leanne's. Actually, she's in Nashville. And so I know this is, you keep hearing this from us, and I know you've heard it from Leanne, and I know you've heard it from us a couple of different times about, that it varies, it varies, it varies. And I know that when you first start out, you really want cut and dry recipes, but they're really, we can give you a recipe and say, okay, well, most people probably spend, between 15 and 30 minutes for spelling, and most people probably spend, an hour-ish for math, and probably the same for the grammar. And then for science and history, it's probably not as many days a week, like Heidi said, but it's more hours, when you're working on it, especially if you're doing hands-on experiments and things like that. So there are certain generic things that we could say, but really and truly, it really does boil down to you and your homeschool. And I know that not having a recipe is challenging. So maybe we need to come up with, I think that that's a reason a lot of people start with a packaged curriculum, because it is very laid out, very standardized, very easy to implement, and that structure is already built in. And I think that for some people, especially when you're first starting out and you want that recipe, that's a very attractive alternative. And I completely understand that. I didn't do that. Heidi, I don't think you did that.
No.
So but a lot of people do. So
No,
if
I know. My thing was my kid that was in school that I took out didn't fit into a box in the first place. Like that was part of the reason we didn't keep her in school. And so I knew that I wasn't just going to be able to buy a box of a set curriculum
Mhm.
and do that. Now, if I had started with a preschooler or a kindergartner, I might have been much more likely to buy an entire, box of curriculum and be on my way. But I started with a child who'd already been in school, and I was already seeing things that were working and not working, and strengths and weaknesses on her part. And so I chose pick and choose things pertaining to what I was already seeing from her. And my biggest thing is that for me is that I have a hard time letting go of things. Here in our state, we have to cover at least 80% of what we originally state, to cover. For me, it's like I want to finish every book to the end, and sometimes I need to learn to let go of that. Although I have my two who are technically done. My one is finishing up her spelling still because mom just likes to have it done, and she loves spelling. And I've had to learn to temper that myself. Is that just because you had an idea in mind and you bought this curriculum and you started with it doesn't mean that's what's going to work. And for someone new starting out, like you said, Megan is new and starting out, And, I have to agree. We can give you a recipe. We can say, try this, this, and this. But ultimately, I think the best advice we can give you is to trust yourself and trust the process and know that once you jump in with 2 feet and get going, you will
Yeah.
start to see more clearly what, how you can adapt and what will work better for you. I mean, like I said, we started out, I'm not a morning person, so we're not up at 6 a.m. doing stuff. Some people are. My teenager gets up with my husband, and, so she's up and she's working by 7 o'clock most mornings, and, she's getting her math done. Math was a struggle for her. It's something she needs to like do and get done and before anything else. So she has the patience. And, there's other people I know that I've heard say, oh my goodness, we cannot do anything until at least after lunch, or, we're better at nighttime, or, so, you really, it depends. And so for me, we have really, really busy schedules in the afternoon and evening with competitive sports. So we need to get all of our stuff done by, 2 o'clock, we need to be done. So, whatever we're doing, we usually do kind of the independent things in the morning, and then whatever history or science that we're doing together, we'll do after lunch, like 12:30 to 2 or whatever. And that's just what we found works for us. But as a new homeschooler, you need to trust yourself, trust the process, pick something, give it a try, and then you will see, it'll start to be clear to you how you can adjust things, to make them work better for you.
Yeah. And you'll see what we're talking about. You'll see somebody will ask you, and you'll say, "Well, I can give you a recipe, but really it depends on your child." So you'll see what we mean once you start. And I think that's the hardest part is jumping in, not knowing. But that's good advice, Heidi. Just jump in and try it, and even tell your children that. Say, we're going to try it. Let's let's start a couple of weeks early, and let's see if we can figure some of this out now. And there's nothing wrong with that. And most children love to be, some kind of structure going on, and especially to have their thoughts heard. So try it and see. Okay, we're going to move on. There was one question in here that I really wanted you to, because you still have a young one. Here it is. It's Whitney. She said she's also a new homeschooler and asked, how do you start your day in early elementary? She said, do you say the pledge, do days of the week, months, years, calendar work kind of stuff? How do you start your day?
I don't, I'm not sure that I necessarily, that was the first thing we did. My Ava's 8 now, but I know when my kids were younger and we were, initially doing that stuff, I had a calendar on the wall that had the movable pieces and stuff on it so that we could, talk about the month and the day and the season and the weather and all of that. And I don't know if you can see it. I actually still have a flag behind me right there. But we had actually, my daughter, my oldest, and I had made a poster board sized. We made a flag, and we used to have that hanging on the wall. And we didn't say the pledge every day, but I did make sure that they all knew how to say it, and so we don't do a formal, okay, this is circle time, this is, sit down time. But yes, with my younger ones, I always had a calendar so that they could visualize and see the days, the months. With each one of them, I worked on making these books of the months. Like we'd have a page for each month, and we did pictures of family members who had birthdays. We'd cut out symbols of, events that happened in that month. So like, Christmas would have something, symbol of, December and Christmas, and January might have a snowman. We get lots of snow here. February would have something for Valentine's Day. So that was kind of a project I did in like kindergarten or first grade with the kids, where we, and it helped them to connect to the family members and to, oh, so and so's birthday is in April, and we'd put a picture of them in April, and so
That's a great idea.
yeah, so, and it was great because, then it was kind of a visual for them, and, it was a way to sort of learn family members, even extended family members, and talk about their, when their birthdays were, and in relation, and how old they were. And like I said, we also did all the holidays. So they each had these books that, had that stuff in it. And then we did the calendar. It just wasn't it wasn't a formal, okay, we're up, we're starting, this is what we're starting with. We did it every day. It was more of when we got to it, when they were ready to do it, and we would do the calendar and move the calendar. Now my little one just constantly asks me, "What's the date today?" And then she'll it's like, "Well, look at your assignment sheet or look at the little corner." She'll be like, "Oh, I see it on the computer," and in the little corner in the computer. But yeah, so and I know lots of people that do start it formally with elementary kids that do want to have that structure, families that do circle time, in the mornings together. So I would say you could do it either way. We just didn't do it in, at a certain set formal, like this is the beginning of our day. But I think that the little kids love that stuff. They like to have the
Hmm.
big calendars and the movable parts, and it's easier for
They
them to
do.
see it and visualize it and walk by it every day, and it's there on the wall. And so I think that's a great part of an elementary sort of routine, if you want to call it that.
It
And then
is.
you just kind of
Yeah.
decide how it works for you.
We also had our children in a school before we brought them home, and they were in a Montessori school, and the Montessori school did do circle time, and so when we came home, that sort of became something that we picked up and did. So we actually did literally have circle time, although it wasn't on a circle. So, but we started with the pledge. We also did the calendar, and like Heidi was talking about, it tends to be the younger ones that love doing that, and it helps them understand time and space and where they sit in it, etc. And so we did that. And sometimes we read scripture, sometimes we didn't, sometimes we would talk about the events for the week. A lot of people use it for planning time. I know Lisa has who's not here today, Lisa Pennington, she has a Monday morning meeting. Remember, she has that big meeting
Yeah.
in her dining room, and she has her big board up there, and they brainstorm on who's doing what. Now, her children are older, so but that's still a form of that quote circle time. It's just taken to the dining room table now. So I do think that, especially when you're first starting out, and they're little, because young children actually like structure. I know it doesn't have to be a ritual. It doesn't have to become something that, we're doing it like we were talking about earlier. You start at 8. Well, I'm not necessarily suggesting that. I'm just saying that have a routine, where it doesn't matter when you start, but you always start doing this, and then that sort of signals that it's time to transition into classroom time. So, I don't know. I think it's a positive thing if it's something that y'all like doing. Don't make it a chore. If it becomes a chore, it's no longer starting your day fun. And I think that's the thing. You want to start it out with them enjoying that aspect of the day, right? To
Yeah.
transition in.
We would get to the point where I wasn't interested, but they'd be like, "Oh, are we gonna, we're gonna still gonna do this?" And I'm thinking, "Oh, we're not done with that yet." What's the weather like? Oh, it's cloudy. Let's get the cloud and stick it on.
Yep.
They love that stuff. They loved it. And and then it finally got to a point where then you could tell that they weren't asking anymore. It wasn't they weren't as interested. And so, as I left it up and then that year went by and then I was like, okay, it's time to take this down now. Like that, the thrill of it is over. It served its purpose and, it's time to move on. And I often feel like I don't have a calendar up on the wall anymore of any sort. And I sometimes think I'm doing my kids a disservice that especially the littler ones, that they would be better off having a calendar up instead of always having to ask. Um, but everything is digital for me. So, my Google Calendar syncs with everything. My teenager has it on her phone. My husband has it on his phone. And my kids have an assignment sheet that they get that I showed you that I print out. So they know what's going on each day and what their activities are. But I don't know. I still think there's something about a calendar. And I still it's like I still think maybe I should put just a calendar up so you can physically see what day it is or check it off or you
Hmm.
know.
I know it is a challenge, and I have to tell you, this is back to Megan, but also to Whitney. As you homeschool longer and more children, some things that you thought were really fantastic, you end up dropping, and then you feel guilty later. Like I didn't do that with little Johnny, and so
Mhm.
I know I've done that already. So heads up. It seems like the guilt, the mama guilt follows you no matter what you do. So whatever.
I was a lot more in, super duper hands-on projects when it was just one. I mean, I have this whole stack we did one year. We did when we did the United States. My daughter literally colored and created each one of the state flags, and it was literally like a border that I had put up around the room as she finished them. And we haven't done that since. It was just her.
Yeah.
So
See?
it's like, oh, we haven't done that with, I mean, not that my kids haven't seen the state flags, or we haven't, like we haven't done something similar, like some covered it, but it just, we didn't do this big projecty thing with it. Whereas like,
Yeah.
I did some really massive, like hands-on-y projecty things with my first one that I haven't tackled as much of that with the other two. And but like I said, with my little one, I do a lot more because she really likes it, and maybe that was some of it too. My middle child is not projecty, cut and pasty, like has no interest in that. So, and maybe that's because he's the boy, and my oldest and my youngest are girls, and that's why they were more projecty based and wanted to do that stuff. I don't know, but for whatever reason, we did a lot of it with my older one. Really phased it out with our middle, and now I do more of it with my little one. So.
Interesting. Okay, Angel asked, how do you know when to sign your child up for something? Her 5-year-old is showing interest in all kinds of things, such as tap, acting, tumbling, art, etc. Oh boy. And Heidi is the
The
queen
queen.
of extracurricular activities. I mean, she actually beats herself up because she's trying to pull out of extracurricular activities. So I'm not sure I should leave Heidi even think about answering that question, right?
No, I have some good perspective on this actually.
Guys.
I think that um I think that it's good to try things. I mean, now I granted I with my first at 3, I started her, it was like we started her in gymnastics and in dance because her one of her friends was going to be, and so we started her in that. And then, we insisted on swimming lessons, and then there was soccer during the summer, and it started to get a little nuts. And but as she started to progress and things, you could see what she took to and what she didn't. And now, I mean, anybody who's heard me talk, she's a competitive gymnast, has been. So, she's been at the gym since she was 3. That was what she stuck with. That's what she loves. Um, and so once that happened, it was like, okay, well, we dropped out of dance. She's clearly not a ball sport kid, so we stopped, didn't sign her up for soccer anymore. We kept those swimming lessons because that was something of importance for me. I felt all of our kids needed to take swimming lessons and become competent swimmers, so we did that with all of them. But then, like my son, we started down this road. We did have him at the gym early on just for good eye-hand coordination, little kid toddler classes. And I just feel like sometimes you put your kids in things and you need to be reasonable, and you need to kind of throw things at the wall and see what sticks. At some point, and I, like Trish said, I eat, sleep, breathe this. At some point, it can be too much. And so she said her daughter was 5, right? My
Yep.
advice would be, if she's interested in something, give something a try. Maybe not sign her up for the, 4 or
All
5
of
or
those.
10, right, all of them, but pick something. And there's so many, at least I know in our area, I mean, there's lots of, whether it's private places, like whether that's for like any sort of martial arts, swimming, the Y, local organizations that are doing rec programs, baseball, soccer, football, whatever it may be. Most of them are, you can get, especially when the kids are younger, you can get in for short increments of time. Like if you're doing, house,
Yeah.
town baseball, it's what, a couple of months. Or if
3
you're
months or
doing,
so.
right, like we did swimming lessons through our community education, and I think it was like 2 months, once a week, that, kind of thing. And so there, I think there's lots of opportunities to try things and see what she loves, and maybe you try one thing, and then the next session try something else, and
Mhm.
not overwhelm yourself or your child, like I have in some cases, with too many things. So I don't think that 5 is too young to start something. I just think that you don't want
Pick
to
and choose.
overwhelm yourself and get into too much. Try something, see if she loves it, I mean, and it's taken longer with our son to kind of find what sticks. And
Mhm.
but we just kept trying stuff, and now he's just started on the swim team, and who knew? He was the kid that was screaming embarrassingly at swimming lessons and wouldn't go in the water. And now he's just, he loves the swimming. And so, and after all these years, he's been playing soccer for 4 years. He's been playing football, and now it's swimming. So I would say try it.
And something I'd like to add is that philosophy of trying. I think it's important for us as parents to introduce them to as many different things as you possibly can. And I don't mean all at one time, like Heidi was saying, but if they show an interest in it, I think it's our job to help them explore it a little bit because as we get older, and I don't think our parents even knew to do this when we were growing up, but to help them find things that help them burn off energy and help them find ways to de-stress and to get away from TV and get away from video games and all the things that try to attract our time now. I think it's important to help them find those extracurricular activities that will help them unwind and will help them stay out of trouble, to be perfectly honest. I mean, Heidi's daughter is so busy with the gym, not saying, Heidi, Lord, I'm not jinxing you. I'm not saying that now, but you never know. I mean, you really don't know. But I do think that if children are engaged and consumed by something, they have less interest and desire to get in trouble.
Well,
So
because
I think,
the idle time can work against you, I mean,
yeah.
not that there shouldn't be downtime. There should be downtime, but in general, when you can get your kids into an activity for like, my daughter, the gym, soccer, whatever it is, you get that. You tend to get that not only the time consumption that it's requiring time, but there's promotion of healthy habits and physical well-being and a sense of team and responsibility to a team. And so there's that sense of, well, it's not just about me too. Like, so it's that, well, maybe I shouldn't, do whatever that is. Like that would, look bad for my team, or that would not be, that's not a good choice. Or so you kind of get this overriding sense and encouragement in health, in healthy living, in being active, in being a part of something bigger.
Mm.
All of those things are a positive benefit to finding some physical activities outside of the house for your kids to participate in. Besides just, the time and the burning off of energy, there's some things about being part of a bigger picture and promoting healthy habits. And so I think those are a great benefit to getting kids into physical activities outside of the house.
I have another question here that it's sort of it's a great segue into it, and it's from Nick's parents, and she's always watching. So hey, she asked about practice habits for guitar, tumbling, piano for their 10-year-old. Her husband thinks they shouldn't have to remind their child, and the wife thinks that maybe creating a log to help her, reach a goal and identify the goal and focus on it might help. But their focus is self-accountability and self-direction and self-discipline. And so they're concerned about defeating the goal, but yet accomplishing the daily goal. Does that make sense? So the big picture versus the little picture. So how do you deal with that? You have a child that has to be highly accountable, I would assume.
It's funny because I fall right into that. I fell into this exact scenario with our son, and the piano, specifically. So, I'm big, and I've been doing a lot more writing and talking about time management for kids as they get older and taking responsibility for things. Um, but I also, they're human, they're people. I am struggling myself. I'm just starting to come out of a couple week period where I would sit at the computer all day, I swear, and get done, and I didn't do anything. I was so distracted. I was, on Facebook, or I'm doing this or I'm doing that, and I'd get to the end of the day and think,
What did I
okay,
do today?
what did I do today? And then I'd be like, so I didn't spend time with the kids, really. The kids got ignored, so to speak, and here I sat at this in this chair at this computer, and what do I have to show for it? Because I was just feeling so unproductive and just was, and so I think even as adults, so I think there is a bigger picture, you know, people, certain personalities, people, we're human. Some people need more accountability. Some people need, I mean, how many times have, we been in a group, here online or elsewhere where people are trying to band together to hold each other accountable for a weight loss program or Bible reading or whatever it is. There is a sense that, some accountability and responsibility to someone else, and having to mark off or check off or state that you've done and stay on a certain schedule is a good thing. So I think there is a balance there. And with our son, um, they all my kids play an instrument. Two of them take lessons outside the house. One is still learning piano from me. And our son, he had his stuff, and he's gone through his periods where suddenly his piano teacher's like, well, what the heck, did you, like, did you practice, what happened? And I would suddenly realize that he had basically stopped playing all the back songs and wasn't really, like, something would get difficult and he just wouldn't do it. I'd hear the piano being played but didn't necessarily focus directly on what exactly was being played. And I literally at one point made a list of all the songs and that I wanted him to play, and I would have him practice, and then I would make him play each song so that I could hear it. I was physically that accountable to him. And we're talking, he's 11 now, so we're probably 10, 9.5 to 10.5, like, I mean, right in this age range we're talking about. And then I would let it go by the wayside and let him then, okay, I got him on track. I gave him the tools he needed, the resources. He knew what was expected of him. I knew that he was capable of doing the things. He wasn't, and all of a sudden his piano teacher's upset with him again. It's like, what on earth happened? And his piano teacher took it, into his own hands and basically told him, I'm not going to teach you anymore if this is what you're going to do. This is a waste of your time. This is a waste of my time. I'm not going to do this. And it was like a light bulb went off. And so I was, embarrassed, of course, but we went home and I was like, well, what are we going to do here, buddy? I mean, do you not want to play? No, I want to play. Well, there's a certain amount expected of you. And it was like a fire was lit under him suddenly, and he went back 2 weeks later and was a lot more capable. And I said, I realized he was just stopping at places that were hard. And I was like, I'm right here. I play the piano. Like, I'll help you. You just need to tell me you need help. And once we kind of broke that barrier, he doesn't want to disappoint his piano teacher now. So he's been much more, I'll say to him, are you gonna disappoint your piano teacher? Are you? And he's like, no. And he's so excited to be, to be having success and to have worked through the issues. So for him, it was what I thought was really an accountability issue. I think was more of he was struggling and didn't really quite know how to, get past that point. So I don't think that accountability is a bad thing. I mean, how many times do we harp at our teenagers? Do we, and I have a pretty responsible teenager, but she's still a teenager. She's still a human. She still needs somebody to check in and say, hey, do you finish this today? Hey, looks like you're spending a little too much time watching TV. Don't you think you should go do whatever? Do I think that you should be hammering something to a point where, that a kid hates it and you're, because we've all seen it, we've all done it. I mean, at least I've seen it, I've done it, in sports, like, you just, we see parents that just keep their kids in even though they're totally miserable and they're totally, and I don't know that that is a good extreme either. So, and I think it's hard in this situation because she's saying her and her husband don't agree, so that adds a tricky element
Yeah,
too,
I agree.
to it. So do I think that do you think it's wrong for a 10-year-old to have to be reminded and told? Absolutely not. We have, full-grown adults that struggle with it, and I don't think any less of adults for that necessarily either. We all at times have issues with accountability and feeling like we're just not quite on track. So I don't think it's wrong to have accountability, and I think you have to decide with, within
Hmm.
your family where that balance is for you, where that balance between, like, I got to the point where I'm like, I am not going to tell you to brush your teeth again. Seriously, you're 11 years old. You brush your teeth in the morning, And yes, there is a certain point where it's like, enough is enough. You need
Yeah.
to, this is the routine, it. You need to do it. And so we went to a board. We have a whiteboard that has a checklist on it. And, if the kids want free time, they have to have completed the checklist. So it's, if we've gotten to lunch and they're like, Mom, can I, watch a half an hour TV? Well, let's see. Did you do your morning routine? Is that stuff done? Let me see your room. Oh, well, your room's not clean. Sorry, you didn't follow the routine. You didn't do what was expected of you. So, nope, no TV. You can go complete what you were supposed to. And
We do that too. We have a daily checklist, and if they want to have games in the evening or anything that's not, we don't. I don't think that games are something they should be necessarily on a lot, and so they have to earn the right to play video games in my house. And so the way they earn that is they have to complete their checklist for the day, which is usually partly school, but partly their chores. They have different things they have to do around the house that they have to take care of, and if they didn't take care of it, they don't, they know not to even come and ask me to be on games if that's not completed. And
right,
so we do the same thing. But I don't know. Yeah, that's a hard question. I think that I can tell you what Lisa would say, who's not here. Lisa would say she doesn't remind. They know what they're supposed to do. It's on the wall, and that's it. And she would then take it to the next level, and she would say, I think so, Lisa. If I'm putting words in your mouth and you watch this, and you can slap me later. I think what she would say is it shows that they're not invested in it, and if they're not invested in it, then I'm not going to waste my money. Is essentially I think what she would say. So,
right.
but I think every household is different. We don't do that. And honestly, in a way, I wish I had, because I think at the high school level, once they get there, I think if we have helped them too much and reminded them too much, sometimes they rely on us too much. And our goal is to lead them to self-sufficiency. And so I do think that we can overdo it too. So I'm mixed too. I'd say try both ways. I'd say try
I
it
know.
and see what works, and have a conversation with your daughter.
Yeah, I'll show everyone my board real quick. I don't did that show, the
Yeah.
screen sharing.
Yeah. Mhm.
This is our board, and what I did was they have their morning routine, and this school assignment sheet refers to the one that I showed earlier. Each one of them has their own, and this morning routine is expected before they start any of their schoolwork, and they mark off their days, and as you can see, these are chores, and I change them daily. And this is, our little chore thing, and so I change them, and the kids are expected, if you want free time, all of these things need to be done. So if you come to me at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and want to do something, well, let's look at the chart. And so for me, that was my balance kind of between them taking responsibility and, they know what's expected, but there's the visible reminder of what's expected. And when they've, fulfilled that, then we'll talk. There we go. Did I take it off now? There we
Yep.
go. So that was kind of our halfway in between you're all old enough now, what you're responsible for. So I put it on a physical board and I don't remind. It's hey, when you come to me and you want something, you know what was expected of you. And if we look at the board and we look at what you haven't done, then you don't get the things that you wanted. Then you need to go back and do the things that you were expected before you get, your free time or whatever it is that, you wanted to move
Hey,
on to.
hey, Heidi, if you don't mind, put that
Well,
picture in our community, because it's not going to show up on the video of mentoring moms, and somebody's going to want to see it.
okay.
So if you don't mind, pop it over there, maybe on the mentoring moms announcement, the big
For
one.
this week.
Mm-hmm. And
Yeah.
then I'll put the video over there once we're done,
Okay.
so that they can see it. And I can put mine in there, but mine is a Word document. It's not anything fancy, so I'll put mine over there too. So hope that helps. I'm not sure it did, because that one's one I'm a little bit hesitant to even touch, because when, like you said, mom and dad don't necessarily agree. Do have opinions though. Okay, so Lori has popped in. Lori was intrigued by what you said about your Google Calendar. She said, I'd love to hear more about Heidi's use of Google Calendar. You mentioned your children have a sheet with their assignment. Is that from the Google Calendar, or do you do that? I'm trying to go paperless too, so I'd love to hear about any apps you use. So,
All right.
your
The
way.
short and the long of it is that I use Google Calendar for all of my daily, like, soccer practices, haircuts, that kind of stuff. The assignment sheet that you see is from Homeschool Tracker. I use Homeschool Tracker for all of my homeschool tracking needs. And I have tutorials and stuff on my blog that, for Homeschool Tracker, and I have more coming. So the assignment sheet is from Homeschool Tracker, not from Google Calendar. And as far
And
as Google,
Lori, her blog is startsaT8.com. 8 is
yeah,
spelled out. StartsaT8.com. Sorry,
yeah,
go ahead.
yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, startsaT8.com. And I have a few posts about Homeschool Tracker and how I use it and how I create an assignment sheet. And I'm getting ready to do one about starting a new year with one so people can see how I actually set it up, to start a new year in Homeschool Tracker. So that's the assignment sheet. And then my Google Calendar, I have everything's color coded. Let me see if I can quick screen share here before let me minimize
And
this.
Lori, are you in our community? If you're in our community, if you're not, it's search on it on Facebook. It's Hip Homeschool Moms Community. Just add the community on the end, and you'll have to ask to join. It's a private group, and we have it closed so people on the outside don't see the posts on the inside. But if you are in there, you can also ask this in there, and Heidi can also share it with you. I'm going to click over to Heidi so you can see it. There you go,
Can
Heidi.
see it. So here's
Yep.
my Google Calendar. Very exciting, but you can see everything's color coded. Yellow is my blogging. These are this light green color is my daughter. If she's added something herself from her own calendar, it comes in as that color as well. You can see that here. And you can share your Google Calendar with people. So my husband gets all of this on his phone. My daughter gets it all on her phone. It comes up on all of my devices. And so we share. And we actually have some organizations, my son's soccer over here on the left, and his football, that use it. And you can actually sign up, like they'll share it with you. And so it comes automatically in. So
Mm-hmm.
there's my Google Calendar. I will unscreen share now here. Let me close.
And so, Lori, if for whatever, yeah, you're still there as
I,
it.
there we go.
There you are. And if you're in the group, I'm sure Heidi would be glad to help you
Yeah,
in there.
absolutely.
That's a
Send me
great
a
question.
private message or put a note in the group and tag me, and I'll be happy to have a conversation with you about it. I'm kind of the scheduling Nazi around here.
Mhm. Okay, so we have actually run out of time, but we have 4 questions left. So you want to keep going?
We can go a few more minutes if you want. What do we got left?
Okay. Um, Mickey, well, actually, we just answered some of them. Mickey would like to see examples of how we keep records of grades and such for high school. So we have sort of actually talked about that, Mickey. We will put, I know Heidi has some links on her blog. She created some. We'll put it over in the group, and I'm not sure if you're in the group, but if you're listening, it's Hip Homeschool Moms Community, and we'll post them over there so you can have the links to Heidi's blog. And I have some. I did a Excel spreadsheet where I literally have it all the way out through the end of high school, and then I have their annual schedules, and then I have their daily tracking. So I have it, the big picture, the middle picture, and then the daily picture. So I think we both have that. So we'll add that. So I think we've already covered that one. So let's see what the next one is. Tina asked, how do you divide your time to give enough one-on-one time to each child when you have multiple children homeschooling and yet still manage to get things done throughout the day? Wow, we've answered that a couple of different times on different videos, and I'm probably going to refer you back to some of those. But a quick and dirty answer would be your goal is it depends on the age first. Let me just say that. If you've got a bunch of kindergartners and first graders that are not independent readers and not independent studiers yet, then I would do everything in my power to have them working together. as much curriculum as you possibly can, do it together as a family. But if they're a little bit older, if they're reading and they're reading at even a second or third grade level, really you can set them down with a book and say, okay, for the next 30 minutes it's reading time, and give them a stack of books if they're going to go through them, and let them read while you're over here working with a different child. So I think that's, again, what Heidi and I were talking about earlier, about that accountability and teaching them independence. I think something that we really need to be remembering is that we want them to learn independently. We don't want them to completely rely on us for their daily spoon feeding of their lesson, right? We want them to have some level of autonomy, right?
Yeah, I think that's really important. And I don't know where I posted. I was recently reading something pertaining to that, and how I think it was actually for our next hip homeschool hop, the post that I chose.
Mm-hmm.
And the mom was referring to, teaching her child to study and to learn, and, to do those things independently, that's your best tool, is, that you learn how to learn, basically. And all my kids are about 3.5 years apart. So I have 14, almost 15, 11 and a half, and one that just turned 8. And my one that just turned 8, over the past couple of years, not this past year, but previously, like kindergarten, first grade, I actually had her signed up for things like ABC Mouse, or reading eggs, or reading kingdom, or time for learning. And what I would do is, when I really needed time with the other two, I would set her to doing something, in one of those learning, venues. And she loved the games. It would keep her occupied. I knew she was learning. And then I would do with her and do something, because she was, the youngest, and then she needed more of my time and attention. But, while I was busy doing something else, it gave me something that I felt was productive for her to do. If she wasn't playing on her own, and just needed something, there often she would be doing a puzzle beside me, or something like that. And so I basically give our kids their assignment sheets. They know what's expected for the day, and when they need help, they ask. Most,
Mm-hmm.
even my 8-year-old is pretty independent. She has her grammar, her spelling books, whatever. When we do like history and science, like I said, more hands-on and together. But she has math, and she sits right next to me. So you see my hand over here, I can practically touch her when she's next to me. And so if she has a question, I'm right here, and can go through the math. So that's how I do multiple. They kind of are all working semi-independently. They're also older, like you said, they're a little bit, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
age still, she's, and I know I have people that often tell me locally that, how independent she is for 8, and that's her personality. So I'm very aware that, there are lots of 8-year-olds that are not as independent as she is. That's her personality. But that's what
Mm-hmm.
I tried to do when she was younger and more demanding, was kind of stagger the kids, work with one and try and occupy the other two, and, I always tell the kids, if you're stuck on something and I can't come, go to the next problem, go to the next thing that you're doing. And, as soon as I'm, free, then I'll come back, and we'll get to that. So like if my son were stuck on math and really just couldn't go, and I couldn't get to him, I'd say, you know what? Drop it for now, go to your, whatever, go to your history, whatever, go read that book. And as soon as I'm done with your sister, I'll get to you. And so that's how I did it, is kind of sort of free flowing, and just, moving from one to the next as they needed help. And they know that if they need to wait, then they move on to something else, and, we'll come back to whatever it is they needed help with.
And that's good suggestions there. And really, that's, if they're all doing math at the same time, not necessarily at the same level, but if they're all doing math at the same time, you can start one lesson, move to the next, get them working, start, do the next lesson, get them working, and then you just sort of stagger them out. And if you've done that all day long, you could almost roll in and roll out. There's almost like an ebb and a flow. You can roll in and out. So I hope that helps, Tina. Okay, and the final question is from one of our teammates, Tanya. She said, how do you help children learn to handle the intense emotions associated with asynchronous development in gifted children? I think Mama's gifted too. um, okay, so in other words, they're learning at a different speed, they're learning at a different time frame, they're learning different ways than the traditional student because of their giftedness or lack of giftedness. I mean, I think this question could go the other way, for students that are struggling. So, how do you help children deal with the emotions associated with being different? Um, okay, so I'm going to go to scripture, and I know we don't. Everybody is not a Christian in our group, but I think there's. I think we're one thing that we don't do. I think in our society as much as we should do is we are called to be different. We walk a different path. We are supposed to look different than the quote world. And I think we have, I don't want my children to feel like they have to fit in and look just like everybody else. I want them to be different. I want them to own those challenges and those differences, whether they are giftedness or whether it's a talent or whether it's just they have one green eye and one blue eye. Whatever that is, that God gave them that specialness, that gift. And so I really think that we as a society have lost feeling that different is good. We have gotten to the point where we think we all have to look like pegs. And I would encourage you to remind your children that, and to teach them that being different is actually part of our walk, that we don't want to all look the same. If we did, we'd be a boring society. So what do you think?
Oh, yeah, I'm all about marching to the beat of a different drum, no matter what it is. I guess I'm that
Yeah.
personality that is I am who I am, and I don't really apologize for it. And so I try and give our kids thick skin, and realize that,
She's in New York, though. Y'all know that, right?
yeah, that's right. That's it. But I don't live in New York City, but I don't know,
I
maybe we're
know.
tough here in New York. I don't know. But that's just my own thing. I try and get my kids to roll with the punches, to, like I said, to have a little bit thicker skin and realize that while what somebody says, about, what judgment may be made about you or what you hear about you you might feel bad, or it might, but you can't let other people define you. And I struggle that with in my own life. I just recently had somebody call me out on something, and my husband says you can't let so and so define you, and I think that that's kind of the philosophy we live by here, is that you're not, and just because you're different, or just because you don't do something the way somebody else does, it doesn't mean that they're wrong, and it doesn't mean that you're wrong. I try to encourage our children to be, supportive and encouraging of others. That just because the way I'm doing something doesn't look like the way you're doing it, it doesn't mean that either one of us are wrong. That everybody's different. Everybody, walks their own shoes, walks their own walk, and has to do things the way that they see fit and that works for them. Um, and so I don't specifically have a gifted, learner in that sense, but as far as dealing with being different and emotionally dealing with the challenges of being different, um, or people that have naysayers that have something to say, I try and stick to that. Like, I want my kids to have thick skin, and I also want them to understand that different is the way of life. I mean, really, even if you look at people that you think are the same, they're still different. They still, everybody has their own bents, their own things, and so I try and encourage our children, and demonstrate in that way that, not only are you different and you were made for something specific and you have your own purpose in life, so do other people. And just because you are a certain way and you were made for a certain thing doesn't mean that someone else is. They're going to be different than you. They're going to have different strengths and weaknesses, than you do. So that's
And
how I
yeah,
kind of.
I think that's good advice too. I think that we already get pigeonholed already as homeschoolers. They have this, bucket they put us in, and all of us know that if you really homeschool and you really go and look at each person's homeschool environment, every single one of us are so different. It's amazing. But from the outside world looking in, they think we're all the same. And so I would just I agree, encourage them to embrace that differentness and help them walk it out. help them, give them tools, to understand that, like you said, Heidi, that we are all different. Okay, so we're 15 minutes way past our time. So yeah, that's what you get when you get two people that talk. That's Heidi and I. So anyway, we hope y'all have a fantastic week. We certainly enjoy doing these every week. So thank you for being a part of it, and providing questions and things for us to talk about. And if y'all have any suggestions on different ways to do this, please share with us, because we're not stuck to the way we're doing it, but it does seem to work. So anyway, y'all have a fantastic week. Don't forget to go visit Heidi at starts at 8, and my personal blog is liveandlearnfarm.com, and we're coincidentally, both Heidi and I both have high school students, and I have middle school students, and she has a middle school student, and she has an elementary, and I have an upper elementary, so coincidentally. But anyway, thanks for being here. We do appreciate y'all, and come join us over in the group. And we'll talk to you next week, same time, same place. Bye.
Bye.